This is how we're gonna make kombucha in 5 easy steps. The first step, we'll clean the equipment. The second step, we will brew our tea. Our third step, we will go ahead and ferment that tea with the SCOBY. Our fourth step, we will go ahead and flavor the kombucha. And our fifth step, we will bottle our kombucha. Our first step is going to be to clean our equipment, but in order to speed things along, I'm going to go ahead and turn the stove on and start our water heating. Now we're going to make 2 gallons of kombucha, but I'm only going to heat up about a half a gallon, and I'll tell you why during that step. Let's go ahead and start cleaning. So we're doing a light stir, and keep in mind the amount of water we're using is only a half a gallon, and we're trying to make 2 gallons of tea. Now the reason for this is we cannot put tea into the SCOBY anything above 95 degrees. And so what we're doing is we're making what's called a concentrated tea. We're gonna make a fourth the amount of tea and then go ahead and add cold water to hopefully cool it off so our SCOBY doesn't die when we add it in there. So the star of our show is what's called a SCOBY. SCOBY stands for symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast. This is what actually completes the fermenting process. This is a bottle of already made kombucha, and so what we're going to do is we're going to show you how to properly clean our equipment. So pretty much every piece of a glass that we're going to use, I've washed very well and I've rinsed very well with water. Make sure that there's no soap left, because a lot of times soap is antibacterial, and since our SCOBY is partly bacteria, we don't want to kill it. The other thing I do is I take some white vinegar and I pour it into each bottle, and then I put it in there and I give it a little shake, and then I'll pour it into the next bottle, and then I'll give it a little shake, and then I'll pour it into the next bottle, and I just make sure everything's rinsed out of all the glassware before we do it. Now a little bit of vinegar left in the bottom of it's fine. Our next step is to go ahead and brew the tea. I like to bring my water to a boil and then actually move it off the heat. We'll go ahead and turn that off. I have in here 3 tablespoons of loose leaf tea, and then I go ahead and close that. And I will put another 3 tablespoons in the next bowl. And so it's basically 3 tablespoons of loose leaf tea per gallon. Now, you can use tea bags if you want, but it's very important that you only use black tea. So we go ahead and put those in there. We'll drop the balls in there since it's past boiling already. And then we'll go ahead and we'll put 2 cups of sugar. So we have 1 cup. We'll go ahead and add that in there. And we'll do 2 cups. We'll go ahead and add that in there. And then I like to go ahead and give it a stir and just make sure all the sugar's dissolved and make sure the tea's ready to go. We'll go ahead and let that steep anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes. People have gone ahead and done longer, but they say after 15 minutes it turns bitter. All right, so our tea has now been steeping for 12 minutes. So we're gonna go ahead and bring the half gallon of tea underneath here. And I just go ahead and use reverse osmosis water. Some of the real kombucha enthusiasts, what they'll do is they'll put the tea in glass, and they feel that glass is the only thing that the SCOBY should touch, and that's fine. I don't have my SCOBY touch the metal until I actually add the cold tea. So what we're doing now is we're cooling the tea down. In the meantime, our next step is to go ahead and ferment the tea. But what I'm gonna do is, since I've already got 1 batch of kombucha done from the previous time, I'm gonna go ahead and get my flavor process ready. Always label everything you do. So I'm gonna go ahead and label it with strawberry and lemon. And in the meantime, I've cut about that much, a good cereal bowl full of lemons, or I'm sorry, of strawberries. And that'll flavor about 1 gallon. And then I'm going ahead and I've got some lemon juice that I freshly squeezed. I use a lemon squeezer. And then I go like this, and I just put it in there, and I just get the lemon juice out. And I'm gonna make this next batch of kombucha is going to be strawberry and lemon, okay? So we've added our strawberry and about 1/3 to 1/2 cup of lemon juice into our next bottle. And so this is obviously the previous batch of kombucha, and we're gonna go ahead and put that already made batch of kombucha, which had been fermenting for 10 days now, we're gonna go ahead and fill that, and that's gonna be our flavor step. Now obviously our third step is to ferment it, but in order to ferment it, what I like to do is a continuous process. So I have to drain this kombucha on the previous batch down to right about where the spigot is. We're gonna keep maybe 1 cup to 3 cups of kombucha left within the bottle, within the glass container. And then we're gonna go ahead and add our cooled tea to it. And then that's what's gonna create the start of the fermentation process. So obviously if you've never made kombucha before, you won't have that previous batch of kombucha. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and take our tea. I like to go ahead and filter it because you'll have some residual tea bags and stuff. I'll go ahead and filter it into a glass container so we make sure there's nothing left over into it. We're gonna go ahead and add the tea to a container like this, and then we're gonna make sure that we put the SCOBY in. Now, typically what I do is before I put the tea in, I go ahead and use one of these, and I go ahead and check the temperature. It was at 78, which is good. You don't want it to be anywhere above 95. Typically below 90 is best. So as we put the tea in there, we know it's cool. We go ahead and drop the SCOBY in, and then what we'll do is we'll go ahead and we'll take a towel and we'll go ahead and cover it up, and we'll go ahead and put that away for anywhere from 10 to 12 days and let that process ferment. All right, so obviously in order to start the process, you need a SCOBY. How are you gonna get a SCOBY? Several ways. The easiest way is to go ahead and buy it on Amazon if you don't know anyone that's already making kombucha. The other way you can do is if you know someone that's making kombucha now, every single time you make a new batch, a new SCOBY forms. So you go ahead and just ask a friend for one. You also, if you really want to go at it, you can buy a bottle of kombucha, a raw organic bottle of kombucha, and you can go ahead and do this same process, and it will actually form into a new SCOBY. Now, typically what you want to do is have an unflavored bottle of kombucha. Otherwise, you'll have that flavoring to deal with every time you deal with your SCOBY. So the 5th step is actually going to be to bottle your kombucha. Now I have a funnel to get it in a bottle, and I have a strainer. It does have its own strainer, but I like to actually use both. There are 2 different kinds of bottles. You have these type of bottles that have a screw tab, and then you have the bottles that are used for stuff like brewing beer and stuff like that actually can lock down. These actually, after you bottle them for a while, get really, really tight, and they're sometimes hard to unscrew. These are a little bit easier. It's just kind of a preference. I don't think it really matters which way. What I like to do is go ahead and add a raisin to the bottle before we put our kombucha in there. Now you can do just about anything, but the reason for the raisin is you're adding a little bit of sugar, and you're giving the yeast and the bacteria something to eat on, and that will actually create the carbonation within your kombucha. Now we have a ladle, so what I like to do is I'll go ahead and I'll put the ladle in there, I'll stir it around, and you can see the bubbles of the fermented kombucha already. And obviously we've done the 3rd step, which was flavoring, kind of before the 4th step, but that was only because it's more of a continuous process. If you're just doing the process as it is, this would actually be after the previous step we just said. So we stir it around, we're gonna scoop it out, and you can see that the strawberries look kind of discolored and funny, and we're gonna go ahead and put it in our strainer, and it's actually gonna go into the bottle. You can see how it's into the bottle now. Now those strawberries, if you see them, they have gotten most of the sugar eaten out of them from the yeast and the bacteria, and they really do not taste very well. So after you've go ahead and scooped it in there, you take the strawberries and you just throw them away. And once your bottle is filled, go ahead and fill it all the way to the top. Sorry about that. Let me go ahead and fill it all the way to the top. So you see that our bottle's filled almost all the way to the top. Now, the more you fill, the more carbonation that will stay within the kombucha. If you leave an extra space, some space in there, you'll actually have less carbonated kombucha. So if you prefer it less carbonated, leave a little space and you won't have as much when you go and open it. So we'll go ahead and screw that on there. And then you set that and you wait that out for 2 days. And then after 2 days, you go ahead and put that in the refrigerator and you're ready to drink kombucha. Now, a couple things to mention. The fermentation process. Obviously, the first fermentation process, I said it took anywhere from 10 to 15 days. Some people do it as low as 5 days. And the reason they do it for a shorter period of time is they don't want that SCOBY to eat up all the sugar, which would actually make the kombucha a sweeter, more sugary type taste. Now, as the SCOBY does its work and it starts eating the sugar and also eating the caffeine within the black tea, you'll get a more vinegary taste, and it'll actually be a little bit more acidic, a little bit more vinegary, and you'll actually be able to have a little bit more carbonation as well. And that's the difference between going a little bit longer and a little bit shorter in terms of your fermentation process. Now, you can add longer fermentation process in the first fermentation, or you can add it after you go ahead and flavor. And that's how we make kombucha. And we would like you to like and subscribe.